Hey ladies, it's Natalia coming to you from Southwest Florida, and I am super excited to be doing this Facebook Live video with you. It's actually my first Facebook Live event, so I'm going to kind of wait a minute here and see how many of you show up. I'm hoping that I do this right and somebody's on here. I'm super excited to be partnering with Tiffany on this and just really getting a heartbeat for marriage and strengthening marriages and building healthy families and all of that. That is kind of just the heartbeat between my husband and I to build healthy marriages, because we've been the product of that. And so just wanted to give you a little bit of my story. My husband and I are from Southwest Florida, and hey, Tiffany. And we have been married 12 and a half years. We have 3 little boys. One's about to turn 10, and we have a 6-year-old and an almost 5-year-old. And I never really pictured that this would be the life that God has called me to live. And I'm super humbled that we have kind of endured. Our story is we were high school sweethearts. Tim and I have known each other since we were 6 years old, and we started dating at 16. We grew up in a really conservative Southern Baptist church, and our families have known each other for nearly our whole lives. And so we just kind of believed that if we had followed the rules and did what you were supposed to do, and didn't have sex, didn't go crazy, didn't break the laws, that you would just have a successful marriage. And so we married at 21, and we thought marriage was going to be easy. We had seen our family live through marriage. My parents have been married over 30 years, and his parents are going on 42 years of marriage. And so, hey Julie, I'm so glad to see you. So we just kind of assumed that marriage would be easy, and we had a really enjoyable time dating and going to college together and just growing up together. So we assumed marriage would be the same, and when we got married, we had a really sweet first year of marriage, and then kind of everything fell apart, and we moved back to our hometown. My husband started working for his father's business. I was teaching middle school full-time, and we, bought a house and added a baby, because that's just kind of what you did. You did the next step, and we found that everything became really hard, and we didn't really know or have the tools and the vocabulary to process what we were feeling. And I struggled with being a teacher at school and a teacher at home. And I thought, if I just micromanaged my marriage the way I micromanaged my classroom, because I was so good at being a teacher, that I would be successful at being a wife. And that was not what my husband needed. And I didn't have respect language, and I didn't have an understanding of manhood and leadership and submission to really encourage or equip my husband to do what he needed to do for our marriage. So fast forward a couple years, and we had been married about 4 or 5 years, and our oldest son was almost 2, about 1.5, and I was prepared to leave. And I remember just being broken, and my heart being broken by things that had happened in our marriage, and hurt had built up and resentment had built up, because I knew the kind of man he needed to be, and I had seen it in him, and I knew what God had called him to, and I wasn't seeing it fulfilled, and I was assuming that it was just his problem. And well, if I was doing all this work for our family and working full-time and parenting and being his wife, well, it's just easier for me to do it on my own. And I remember coming to a place where we had had a fight, and I thought, the next fight we have, I'm going to demand a divorce. And God is just so gracious. He's so gracious, because there wasn't another fight. And I remember having a mental plan and having an exit strategy, so to say, and telling God, this is it. Like, this is the end of me. I'm not going to do this anymore. And there were some things that changed in Tim's life very quickly. God had kind of gotten a hold of his heart and steered him in a certain direction, and we switched churches, and we found a group of people that were really walking marriage well. and we got involved in a very risky life group in a very small church, and we saw that other couples were struggling and other couples didn't have their crap together, and this picture, this idealized picture of marriage that I had painted in my head was not legitimate. And so we began to study marriage, and we began to study speakers and teachers that presented a biblical viewpoint of marriage. And we realized that it was very possible, and God designed marriage for me to submit and still be strong. And when I let go of everything in my marriage and said to Tim, if you don't do everything that's needed to make this work, this isn't going to stand, I really saw my husband step into who he was created to be. And, that's so hard for a woman who's strong, because I'm very vocal, I'm very strong-willed, I'm very opinionated, I'm very educated, and I've been very successful in the secular world. I was a very successful teacher, I was walking a career ladder, and I knew I could do it. And so Tim and I come back to a lot of, just because I can doesn't mean I should. And there's a very big difference in that. Just because I can lead doesn't mean I should lead. Just because I can fix the situation doesn't mean that I should fix the situation. And sometimes God was very much saying to me, sometimes you have to let the pieces fall for your man to see that he's got to step in and fix it. And so I really stepped back a lot, and God was so gracious, because he had been working on my heart for many months as far as pointing out my sin and showing me that my sin was no different than my husband's. And I was very quick to cast a stone at him and be like, oh, you've done this, and oh, you've done this, so all these problems are your fault. Where God was saying, no, Natalia, your sin is just as bad as his, and your comparison is just as bad as his, and your criticism is just as bad as his. And he really softened my heart. And so we got involved in a really good church, and we got involved in a really powerful life group, not because the content was amazing, but because the people were real and transparent about their marriages and their families and their struggles. And we just realized we just need people to do this life with us. So fast forward 8 years, or about 8 years, into the other side of our marriage, and we've added 2 children, and we currently are life group leader coaches for all the married couples in our church that lead married couple life groups. So we have a hitched program. We run a once-a-year marriage getaway program that our church does down in South Florida, where we rent out this beautiful hotel and couples get away, and we hear from speakers, whether we bring them in or we do them in-house through the church and pastoral staff. And so Tim and I have a real big heartbeat for that. Just community groups where people are seeing it's an 80-20 thing. Like, marriage is great 80% of the time, and 20% is just really, really, really hard. And we need to just kind of persevere through the 20%. We need to remember that it's not what we read in books or we see on Hollywood magazines and movies. It's just life, and that we've covenanted our hearts together before God to just do this, to witness each other's life, and to stand together and say, I'm going to do this with you, and I'm going to do this forever with you. And that's been a real game changer for us. We are big proponents of the love and respect teaching from Dr. Emerson. We have taught that in our church group probably once a year for the last 8 years. And just realizing that my husband doesn't need my love. He needs my respect. And when I honed into that as a woman, and I came into respect talk, respect affirmation, respect vocabulary to my husband, his heart softened towards me. When I met his needs on his level, not my level, then he was open to see my needs on my level, and just validating each other as different, that he is a man, and a man is created very differently than a female. And I was trying to get him to love me and value me as a woman, expecting him to understand me as a woman, and he doesn't. He's a man. So we have a big thing, it's just not wrong, it's different, and Dr. Emerson teaches that, and we say that a lot in our marriage when we're both on different sides to things, is he can be completely right with what he's saying and what he's feeling and what he's doing, and so can I, even if we're completely different, in that that's okay, and that we are to bring out each other's strengths and to support each other and to encourage each other and to sharpen each other. And that just looks very different than what culture tells us. And so we've just, we have a heartbeat for marriage because it's been something that's changed in our lives. And we want to change that for our kids. We want our boys to grow up and to value women and to honor them and to see them as strong and capable and to be sharpened by them, but to treasure them and cherish them as God designed them to be. And so we work a lot with our boys on what does manhood look like? What does biblical manhood look like? What does biblical womanhood look like? And so God's just really been bringing me through that process the last couple years of what does it look like for me as a woman to be strong and spoken and use the giftings and talents that he's given me and still be under the submission and authority of a man and not be threatened by a man, but to encourage him, to be strong for him so that he can be stronger. And I think that's just been amazing, because as God brings that out in me, he has brought out more in my husband. And so that is just encouraging, because my husband has really stepped into what I wanted him to be 10 years ago. I just didn't realize it would take so much time. And I think so much of what we want in marriage is like McDonald's drive-thru. You know, we want to put little effort, little financial investment, little time into marriage, so we treat it like a McDonald's drive-thru, and then we expect an Outback steak. And that's just not going to happen. You know, we're not going to get a gourmet meal in 2 minutes. And so we look at these marriages that have taken 20, 30, 40 years to be seasoned and shaped and molded into really strong biblical marriages, and we come out at 25 thinking we're going to have that, and we're just not. We're not going to have that. And so investing in our marriage first instead of our kids or our finances or our family, and investing in each other, because at the end of the day our boys are going to leave, and we want that. We want our boys to launch well, but we're going to be stuck with each other. And that's our plan, is to just invest into our friendship, into our relationship, into our intimacy. And so we put guardrails and margin into our marriage to make it for the long haul, because we've almost missed it, and we don't want to miss it. You know, we want to stick it through. So I'm super excited to join in with Tiffany on this, because she's got a heartbeat for marriage and she's got such an amazing system here. And I'm so excited because I feel like as women, when we can hone in on respect and what our men really need, when we can tap into what God has called us to do, which out of Ephesians is to respect our men, then we tap into something that their heart is crying for. And when we can get to that heart level of our men, then we can open up and receive from them what our heart wants, and that's that emotional intimacy, that unity with them, and that comes from tapping into their heart first. And you know, God gave us everything that we need to be successful. We just have to read it right. We have to do it well. And the culture is going to tell us a very different story than what Scripture says. And so my heartbeat is just to uncover that with women, to just help us unlock that, and to do this marriage thing well. So I see a couple of you had joined, and I'm so excited. If there's any questions you have, I'll hang out here for a little bit and maybe answer them for you, or hoping that I'm not taking up too much time here. We've got a house full of kids over at my in-laws today, and I stepped outside because it's just beautiful weather. So I'm super excited to be with you. Yes, I agree, Tiffany. Definitely marriage has to be the first if we are going to parent well. And we kind of hit on that in our small groups too, that you know, we don't do parent studies because we all parent differently, but if we really are unified as a team in our marriage, then our parenting kind of falls into play, because our kids can't play us against each other. The retreat that we do here in Florida is part of Deep Creek Community Church, and we do a marriage getaway down at the Coconut Point Hyatt Regency Hotel, and it's gorgeous. We get it for an amazing rate, and we kind of go Thursday through Sunday, depending on how long couples want to stay, but usually it's Friday night, a session, worship, community time, Saturday afternoon, session, community time, worship, and then just kind of let couples have a break from their normal life. Julie asked, can you tell us what kind of margins you put in your life to invest in your marriage? That's awesome. Yes. So one thing that we do is Tim and I try to do once a week date night in bed with ice cream and a sermon. I know that seems kind of weird, but my husband's not a reader, so if I ever brought a marriage book, he'd never read it, which is pretty typical for most men, and I think it just kind of was grating on him when I would bring a book and be like, hey, we need to work on our marriage, and he'd be like, hey, everything's fine. But we found that if we would put on a podcast or a video sermon from a preacher that was neutral, so another man telling a man what he needs to do, my husband wasn't offended. So we would sit in bed and eat ice cream and listen to a sermon, and it allowed us to have a neutral party that said, hey, you need to step up your game. Or even call out to me different things that I needed to do as a woman in marriage. And so we've listened to Mark Driscoll in his Real Marriage series, and that was kind of a game changer for our marriage. We're doing with our small group right now, but we've walked through it in the past, Matt Chandler's Beautiful Design. We've done Love and Respect and Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. And so it's just super easy, usually like Wednesday or Thursday night, whatever night there's not something on TV. We pop in a 45-minute podcast, we sit in bed in pajamas, and then it usually opens up a lot of time to talk, to say, is that how you feel? And then my husband would be like, yeah, I didn't have the words, or I didn't know how to explain it, or I didn't have the vocabulary or tools to put to it. And so a really easy neutral party. We also try to do a State of the Union marriage date night once a month. So our wedding anniversary is May 28th. So the 28th of every month, we try to go out to dinner, get a babysitter, ask the grandparents to watch the kids, and we kind of take inventory and say, how are we doing? Like, have we had sex enough? Have we, how are our finances? What are the big goals that we have for the next month? What are we planning? What did we do well, or where did we fall off track in the last month? And just kind of check in. And that has been real helpful. And then every year for our anniversary, we take a week. And this has been a game changer. And I know it's taken a financial investment and a work time investment, and it requires our kids to get shuffled around with grandparents. But we take a week, usually 5 to 7 days, and we leave town. We've done a cruise, we've gone out of town, we've gone out of state, we've stayed at people's houses that have like cabins or whatever. And we check out. We turn everything off, and we just spend the week being friends. Last year we did Islands of Adventure, because we live here in Florida. We just wanted fun. And so one of us plans the odd years and one plans the even years. And so this year was an even year, and he plans the even years. So I give a year word. So this year I said, I just want to have fun. And he plans the trip. And I don't know anything about it until he tells me where we're going. And then next year he gets to pick a word for the year, and I plan the trip. And we set a budget, and we kind of know, what our parameters are. So we do that every year for our anniversary, and then about 6 months later we do the marriage getaway. So it just gives us something in the spring and something in the fall to get away and kind of reset each other and just focus on each other and not the demands and pressures and everything else that we do in life. So yeah, we call it State of the Union, and I love it. I love our date night. So yes, Julie, we do our getaway once a year with our anniversary. I haven't seen Jolene Engel and her husband's podcast, Tiffany, so I'm going to definitely put that on my list and check that out. And I'm always looking for new sermons and podcast series. There's also a preacher out of Jacksonville with Church of 1122 that we really like. Jovi Morgan, I think is his name. And he's really solid biblical-based teaching, and it's been really encouraging. So any more questions, ladies? I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know everybody's kind of busy on a Sunday and setting for the week and getting ready for the week ahead. So anyways, I just want to thank Tiffany so much, And I'm so appreciative of all you ladies and all the work that you're doing to build marriages and encourage marriages. I love it. I love seeing across the country and across the nation women saying, I've got a calling on my life to serve my husband and serve my family, and I'm going to do it well. And so I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. And if you're watching this and you're feeling like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, I'm not sure I'm going to make it one more day, you know, just put that before the Lord. Make it one more day. Make it one more day, because one day may be all that you need. And so, yes, just be encouraged. If we can make it, you can make it. And the enemy so wants to destroy our marriages, and that's just not what we need him to do. We need to fight, because if we can save our marriages, if we can build solid families, we can change the next generation, and I think that's what God wants. So I'm going to go ahead. Oh, one more. Yes, Jen, it was super awesome. Definitely, totally think just throwing on a sermon series from a different preacher totally helps, because it's just neutral party. So I'm going to go ahead and hop off of here, and I hope to connect with you guys. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Natalia Drumm, and on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not really big on Twitter. I'm not learning that one real well. But you can check me out on my website too, nataliadrumm.com. I'm really interested in biblical womanhood and encouraging women to get in their Bibles. Like, if we just get in our Bibles, everything changes. So I will talk to y'all soon. Thanks for having me.